here I have some lovely dog rose that has been collected out of my garden while I've been gardening, and of course I can't let it go to waste. So I wanted to tell you a bit about that dog rose, because these are some plants that actually carry a history with it. So most of the people do recognise these flowers that you can see here, but the magic comes later. So these turn into bright red rose hips that appear after the flowering is done, and they were actually massively important during World War II in Britain, because citrus fruits were actually really hard to get hold of. So people were actually encouraged to collect the wild rose hips off dog rose to make a syrup, because they're actually, the rose hips, these are some of the old rose hips. These won't go in my forage, don't worry, but these are some of last year's rose hips. So, but they were naturally packed, like the rose hips have a huge amount of like vitamin C, so school children were even sent out to gather them for the war effort as well. So it literally became part of natural survival during that time. And honestly, this is one of the reasons I love using like traditional hedgerow plants like this, because they weren't chosen because they're trendy online. I choose them because people valued them for generations before us. And not only that though, for animals it really does help, because dog rose really does help to add like natural variety, because you've got all these different textures. You've got the leaf textures, you've got the petal textures here, and then when the rose hips come in, you've got the rose hip texture as well. I don't tend to use the stems, but naturally like animals would forage, nibble on the stems and whatnot as well. So it's a more seasonal and really wild style feeding experience for the animals that have unfortunately over time, well, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, have become domesticated on time and don't tend to get these amazing sort of hedgerow plants in their diet. So it's also one of those plants that wildlife absolutely adore as well, because the bees use the flowers, obviously, these gorgeous flowers, and the birds will eat the rose hips throughout the autumn and the winter. But the thorny structure, so if you can see here, we've got little thorns all down the stems. You can kind of see them all over the stems there. Those thorny structures create actual shelter and nesting spots as well for the animals. So it's basically a tiny hedgerow ecosystem all by itself, just like in this one plant. And I always love plants like this because it reminds us that weeds and wild hedgerows, I'll get there, but I can't blooming speak, can I? They're often doing a lot more work than we actually realise, which is why, even though I've tucked this down in my garden, I have left it to grow into a huge bush before I've trimmed the outside of it, and I still leave it very bushy. People hate my garden because it's so bushy. But this is why, because it is so amazing. So what I want to know is, do your furry friends or feathered friends or any friends of the pet kind, like, do they prefer the petals, leaves, rose hips? What do they like most of this plant? And if you want to go over and have a look what is in store with rose hips, you can look at the ingredients within each of my forages to see what there is. And you can take a look at www.guineagourmettreats.co.uk. And what's even more better is, if you want one that is specifically got this a lovely amazing plant in it, you can just drop me a message. You can do this at guineagourmettreats@gmail.com as well.